We're here with SDSU marketing lecturer and co-founder of Bottom Line Marketing, Miro Kopik. Miro, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jade.
Okay, so I want to jump right into the NCAA and our Fair Pay to Play Act here in California. NCAA did all that barking when that legislation came out. Here we are a few weeks after it being signed, and there's a reversal. Why?
They've got a lot of pressure on them, and it's not just California. There's a dozen other states that are looking at legislation similar to California's. California's legislation doesn't enact until 2023. Florida, for example, is looking to potentially pass a law very similar to the California one, but by this summer. So athletes actually can start selling their likenesses in the fall of 2020. Oh. So the NCAA is in a lot of trouble, and even Congress is getting into the act. And so with that pending on them, they needed to act. And they've been working on this since May, and they have the next 12 months to get it done.
And speaking of those two pieces of legislation, do you think it's possible that scholarships could be taxed?
Wow, that's a great question. Still likely not, but that's where the rule comes in. If the income of those players will likely be taxed if they sell their likeness or their name, but scholarships maybe not. But it might change the whole scholarship equation when it's all said and done. All
right, we'll move on to the next thing. Things in California got a bit more complicated in efforts to set fuel standards. A lot of them, few motor companies actually are siding with the Trump administration. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, we talked about this a month ago in August when four of the largest companies in the world, Ford, VW, BMW, and Honda, all sided with the state of California for emission and miles and fuel economy standards at about 50 miles per gallon, which is very similar to the Obama era standards. The Trump administration has wanted to take those down substantially. The other auto players didn't really commit until this week. So General Motors, Fiat Chrysler, and Toyota all signed on to support the government standard. They're not necessarily claiming that it's the standard itself, but the fact that there should be one regulation across the country for all auto manufacturers. Really, there's going to be a handful of winners and losers in this one. The losers are going to be General Motors and Fiat Chrysler. The reason is they both took big government bailouts. They are not doing very well. General Motors has endured a huge strike in the last month, and by siding with the administration on this one, it shows that they don't seem to care about fuel economy standards. If consumers get the 50 miles per gallon, they're going to save well over $1,000 a year in fuel costs. If they get the lower standards, they're going to be still paying a lot more at the pump for the privilege of having a lower MPG rating.
All right. Well, finally, speaking of paying more at the pump, I mean, this week we did get a big indicator on the health of our economy. Tell me, what do the GDP numbers mean? What can we take away from what we just learned?
Wow. You know, the GDP numbers, there's been a lot of numbers this week. So we'll kind of break them down. We'll start with the GDP number. It was released earlier this week. The economy grew in the third quarter 1.9%, which is a little bit above expectations, but well below the average growth rate in the U.S., which is above 2. Secondly, the deficit was announced last week that it will cross $1 trillion later this year. That's a major issue because the tax cut is a big factor of that deficit growing that quickly. The goal was to grow 3% or more. The U.S. economy in the last several years only grew over 3% one time. The Fed then had to reduce the interest rates by 1/4 of a point to keep the economic our growth going. We've had 109 months of straight job growth. So a lot of numbers are coming together, and what it boils down to is at the end of the day, the business negative sentiment and consumer relatively positive sentiment have to be reconciled. Either consumers are going to convince businesses to start investing again and increasing production, or business sentiment, but because they're going to start cutting jobs, is going to change consumer sentiment and consumers will buckle down. And this is kind of, we have to kind of watch it as we head into the holiday season.
All right, well, hopefully some of the anxieties will be eased soon. I've been speaking with Miro Kopik from SDSU and Bottom Line Marketing. Miro, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jade.